Welcome to my June reading recap. I had an amazing reading month in June. I read 7 books, many of which were new authors that I hadn't read before, and I even found my new favorite book, which I am so excited to talk about. First, I'll talk a little bit about the books that I enjoy reading, the genres that I love, and that maybe will give you a little bit of an insight as to how I rate my books and kind of why. My favorite genres are fantasy romance. I also enjoy historical fiction. I like a thriller. I like a romance book every now and then, and those are kind of the genres I'd say I stick to the most and the ones that I enjoy reading a lot. That being said, since we have a lot of books to get through, I'll just go ahead and jump in. The first book that I read this month was Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. This is the first book that I ever read by him, and he is a very popular author here on Book Talk and BookTube. People sing his praises, and I have to say, I was a little bit disappointed by this book. Now, having read it and having kind of seen some of the reviews about it, it's sort of a bit of a collective thought that this isn't maybe one of his best, or just maybe not a fan favorite. This book takes place in a world, essentially there's a ton of different seas that are filled with these spores that have kind of different properties when they interact with water. And we follow our main character Tress, who lives in this kind of desolate place called The Rock, where she's never left before. And we follow her as she kind of takes this journey to save somebody that she loves very much. And on that journey, she sort of discovers herself, makes unlikely friendships. The world of this book was very interesting to me, and I really liked the premise of it. I think, unfortunately, the story just kind of fell flat. I honestly can't even remember that much about it, and I feel like that's kind of just really tells you it wasn't anything too special. I ended up at the time rating this book a 3.5 stars, but since then, considering I kind of can't remember much about it, I'd probably drop that down to 3 stars. Definitely not a bad book, but just nothing super memorable. I definitely want to read some of Brandon Sanderson's other work, just because the writing is honestly, I feel like, what kept flowing me through the story, because it was just like really beautiful writing to read. The next book I read was 5 Survive by Holly Jackson. I read quite a few books by her in the past. I read the Good Girls Guide to Murder series, which I did enjoy at the beginning, but as the series kind of went on, I didn't really love how it ended. And then I read the Reappearance of Rachel Price, which for me kind of felt like a regurgitation of A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. The setting, the characters, and sort of relationships between the characters felt really similar, and kind of like I'd read it before. And so that's why I was excited to pick up 5 Survive, because it felt like the premise of this book was way different than any of her other books. In this book, we follow our main character, Red, and this book takes place in an RV over the course of one night with 6 characters. So it's a very limited time, limited setting, limited space. And I enjoyed how she sort of developed these characters and the plot very quickly. How the story starts is these 6 friends are in an RV and they're going on a spring break trip where they end up breaking down and then are kind of caught in a bit of a hostage situation, I guess you could say. And as it continues, it escalates. They have to figure out how to get out of this, and then it kind of just spirals as it goes in true Holly Jackson fashion. The main character of this book I didn't really love. She kind of just felt annoying, and I didn't really understand why she would kind of like fixate on things. I did end up guessing kind of the plot twist, but I thought it was still a good plot twist, and so I enjoyed reading it. Overall, I just felt like this book was very different from the other things that she has written before, and because of that, I did very much enjoy it. I ended up rating this book a 4 stars. The next book I read is the newest book in the Percy Jackson series, The Chalice of the Gods. And this book is the first in kind of a little mini series where you follow Percy Jackson in sort of his journey getting into college. And so this book starts out, Percy's in his senior year of high school, and he finds out that he can't get into college unless he gets 3 recommendation letters from 3 different gods. And in order to get those recommendation letters, he has to go on quests. And then when he completes a quest, he gets a recommendation letter. So each book is like kind of going to be a different quest. We're following our favorite characters that we all know and love, which is Percy, Grover, and Annabeth. Sorry, The lighting was starting to get really dark, so I had to kind of shift over a little bit, which is a little bit better. Anyway, I was talking about Percy Jackson. I ended up rating this book a 3.75 stars. I feel like I already know I love these characters and I love this world, and so that's sort of like a baseline 3 stars for me. And so since I rated it a 3.75 stars, this book did fall flat for me a little bit. With the past Percy Jackson books, I'm just used to the stories feeling super high stakes, and this book just didn't really have it. So while I always love reading about these characters, this book wasn't anything too special in my opinion, but I will forever read any new content that comes out about them, so I'll definitely pick up the next books whenever they come out. It was an easy read, it was enjoyable and fun, nothing too special. I definitely like the other books in the series better, but nonetheless I did enjoy reading it. Now, if you watched my vlog, you would have seen me read this next book, and that is Beach Read by Emily Henry. And I, shockingly to myself, really enjoyed this book. We follow our main character, January, who has just had a major life change where everything she kind of knows about herself and her world and about love sort of kind of crumbles apart, and she has to go on this journey to sort of rebuild that and find what that is again. And she's also an author and she's in a writing slump because of all those things. And in the process of that, she meets another author whom she has history with, and they sort of kind of team up a little bit to encourage each other to write. And through that, they kind of create a challenge where they sort of switch sides a little bit, and because of that they end up spending more and more time together, which just sort of grows their relationship. This book was pretty spicy for me, at least. It was open door, which I kind of prefer closed door, but I did really like this book. I think my favorite parts about reading this book were when January was writing her book and you were kind of reading her writing. There were many moments when I was reading those parts where I would just kind of stop and be like, whoa. She would write something so profound and it just sort of stopped me in my tracks, and I loved that. I am not much, I kind of mentioned this in the vlog, but I don't annotate a ton, I don't highlight a ton. I talked about some quotes in that vlog that I really enjoyed, and this book also had some funny quotes. At the time that I read this, and you would have seen this in the vlog, I rated this book 5 stars. Now, since having read this book, I read another romance book that completely changed what it means for a book to be a 5 stars. And because of that, I think I have to lower the rating of this book to a 4.5 stars. Now, still an amazing rating, still loved the book, but this book that I will talk about in a little bit is just on an absolute different level. And I can't put them both in the 5-star category because that one is just in a league of its own. I'm like speechless about it, and I'm not even talking about it yet. So because of that, I think Beach Read to be a 4.5 stars. I loved it. I loved the setting. I loved the characters. Gus, love him. To me, he was a very unexpected male character. I think I typically don't love male characters that are kind of have his personality, that are maybe like a little bit grumpy or a little bit stuck up, but he was just very intriguing, and as you kind of continue to learn more about him and what makes him him, you sort of fall in love with him and then really start to root for them as a couple. The next book I read, I sort of hinted at in that vlog that I had started a very popular book series, and that is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. This book starts where we're following our main character, Feyre, where she is living with her family in pretty severe poverty, and so she has to go and hunt to kind of provide for them to eat and also get money for them so they can literally just eat. In the process of her hunting, she ends up killing a fairy unknowingly, and because of that there are like treaty laws that take place, so she has to go live across this wall in a different land with the fairies. And from there she ends up forming some really unlikely and strong relationships with these different characters and interacts with this like really amazing world where I feel like she really ends up kind of coming into her own and kind of discovering who she is. While she's there, she kind of discovers some things that are happening behind the scenes and ends up being like some of the actions and the things she does sort of changes the course of everything. And also in the process, she falls in love with our main male character, whom I really did like. The only thing that like feels a little bit disappointing is this is the first book in a very long series, so I feel like there's no way they're gonna stay together for like 6 more books. In this book, you're kind of introduced to multiple different settings and multiple different characters that are very interesting, and I'm very excited to read about as the series continues and sort of see how the different relationships between the different characters develop as kind of time goes on. I literally have no idea where this story could go, but I'm very excited. I do know that this series is pretty spicy and it's pretty open door, which I'm not super excited about. I've heard some people they just flip through it and are fine, so I'm hoping I can do that and still enjoy the series. Now, this next book that I read is my new favorite book, and that is The Bodyguard by Katherine Center. Literally, I don't even know what I'm going to say about this book because it was so good. 6 stars, 7 stars, 8 stars, I don't even know. Best book that I've read in such a long time. I have nothing bad to say about this book. It was perfect. The premise of this book is we're following our main character, Hannah, and she essentially is a bodyguard. It has like a more technical term for her job, but she kind of just calls herself a bodyguard. She ends up getting hired by a very famous actor and gets put in this very interesting situation where his family and the people around him can't know that he has a bodyguard, so she has to pretend to be his girlfriend. And so because of that, I mean, you can already guess. The setting of this book was absolutely perfect. It takes place on a ranch in Texas, which was so magical and so whimsical. I could picture it perfectly in my head. It just felt perfect and I absolutely loved it. The main male character, Jack, is just... I just liked the way you could really tell that they were developing an emotional connection based off of like their own personal experiences, the things that they were going through. And also you just got these like really sweet little hints of like the acts of service that he would do, like the sweet looks he would give her. And just sort of watching their relationship develop over time just felt so sweet and wholesome. And like to me, like that is what a good romance book is. This book just gave you that butterfly 5-star feeling that is like unexplainable, and I will be chasing that feeling forever. I will be reading everything that Katherine Center has ever written because I'm obsessed with her writing. I'm obsessed, and that is the truth. The last book I read this month was the second book in a little series called The Dreamkeeper Saga, and the second book is called The Prince and the Blight. Now this little series is kind of unique. It's definitely like for 12-year-olds, but I sort of like to pick up series like that every now and then, especially if I'm like in between books or I'm waiting for a hold to become available, or maybe I'm in like a book slump and I just need something like wholesome and easy to just sort of get through. I'll pick up something like that. I like having like some different series that I'm in the middle of that I can just pick up the next book whenever I just need something quick and easy to read, and so this series kind of is one of those. The premise of these books is you're following this girl named Lily, where she sort of discovers that she has some abilities and powers in this other alternate reality called The Realm. And so you sort of follow her as she encounters different scenarios, makes new friendships, solves different conflicts that she encounters. And so it's really wholesome, it's really sweet. You just kind of see her little friendships and the way she kind of handles things and the little life lessons she learned. It's a super easy read. I think I ended up rating this book like 4 stars. Sometimes I don't always rate those books because they aren't typical books that I would necessarily like love, but I just enjoy reading them whenever I get the chance to. Those are the 7 books that I read in the month of June. I'm really excited to see the books that I read in July. I'm already in the middle of a couple of really good ones, and so I'm excited to share about those at the end of this month. I hope to see you here again soon. Thank you for stopping by.